Now some of you want to do boaters, so today I'm going to show you how to prepare the brim. Now the supplies that you're going to need some safety goggles, and I'm going to show you how to do it on the machine. If you want to do your buttonhole stitch over your wire instead of using your machine, you can do that. But if you're using your machine, you're going to need safety goggles. You're going to need wire, wire cutters, your crinoline, and I love these quilting clips. So you can use clothespins, anything you want to secure the wire on the buckram before you're going to sew it. Now the other thing is, what I have done, I'm going to take my foot off the sewing machine here. Here is a regular sewing machine foot. So what I did is I bought a second, you see how it's flat here? I bought a second one and took it to a sewing machine place and asked them if they could put a little divot in here. So can you see what they put in here? Maybe if you can see that better like that. So they used a round file and made that. It looked like it was pretty easy to do. And now when I sew over the wire, the wire will fit right in here, and I can zigzag right over it. Now if the needle touches the wire, it's going to burst and go flying. So that's why you need to use safety goggles. So be sure to wear safety goggles because it could be dangerous. The other thing you're going to need is a buttonhole, a zipper foot. So we're going to be using that also, and I'll show you how to do it. So let's get started with this little project. It's going to be very exciting. Now you cut out your buckram piece, your brim, and make sure that you have the center marked with the center front and the center back, and then the seam going around here. Now what I did was, after you cut the middle part out, what I did was I took it to the sewing machine. Let me put my foot back on. And sewed around a 1/2 inch so that I don't lose my seam allowance. And the reason you don't want to lose your seam allowance is because when you start covering it with inner lining and material, it's real easy to lose. So I sew around a 1/2 inch, and so you can see that here, the line here where I sewed around. I did it in contrasting threads so it's easy to see. Then the next thing that you would do is make these little notches. So you take the scissors, and be sure to use a paper scissors. You don't want to use your good scissors on buckram. And we're going to make these little notches, and each one is a 1/2 inch apart. And as I mentioned before, if you start getting any further apart, you're going to start losing your curve here. So it's very important. So this is the next thing that you want to do to prepare your buckram brim before we sew the wire on the outside. Okay, after you've done that, the next thing to do, and I've got a little bit of wire here to show you how to sew it on the machine. The first thing I would do is put my little clips on to secure the wire. Now sometimes, so when you cut the wire, you measure around the circumference, add 2 inches, cut it with the wire cutters, and it'll overlap 2 inches here in the back. So sometimes I will do that by hand, sometimes I can do it by machine. So we'll try it right now and we can see. So I've got the little clips on here to hold this down. And now I'm going to put my safety goggles on. You put your machine on zigzag. And start zigzagging. And then I take the clips out as I come to them. And sometimes I will hand do the where it's overlapping here in the back. Take another clip out. Go very slowly, and a lot of times I'll go back over it to reinforce it. And you want to put the wire on the edge here. And I'm hoping that you can see this. And I'll get a scissors. Cut that off. And you can see how nice that is. Isn't that great? So I try to do everything in contrasting the wires, contrasting black with white thread so that it's easier for you to see. And the overlap 2 inches there, and you always want to do that in the back. And that kind of makes the brim go fast instead of doing the buttonhole stitch by hand. But a lot of times people enjoy doing just handwork, so it's up to you which one that you want to do. Now it's important to always cover wire with the crinoline. So what I'm going to do is change the thread to black, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I've put black thread on, so it will be contrasting with the white crinoline when I'm sewing it. It'll make it a little easier for you to see. And the first thing I did was put my zipper foot on my machine. You want to take the zigzag off so that you have a straight stitch. Then you're going to put your needle over to the far right. I'm going to put this on here, and you're going to butt the zipper foot right up to the wire here. And the crinoline stretches, so as you're sewing, and you need to make sure you have your safety goggles on. I think that you can see that. Now, this will overlap in the back, and you can overlap it 1 inch or 1.5 inches. And as I mentioned before, this will keep the wire from poking out. And a lot of times we sew the material to the crinoline. Okay, I'm going to take that out. I ran out of crinoline. And I would go the other way. So now you can see that I use contrasting thread here, and you can see how nice that looks. So when you finish the project, this is what it should look like now. So you have the center back and the center front marked, center front here, center back. You have your seam allowance here with your tabs. You have your wire sewed on and your crinoline sewed on. And so then we'll be ready to go to the next step. All right,